Action. To be fair, I've been up all night, all week, so. But definitely last night I was up for God. So, good morning, Joy City Church. Many of you know me from the beginning of my ministry here at Joy City Church. And if you knew me, you'd know that I was a lot different from who I am today. I was living a life designed for me by this world, and I did not have peace within me. However, in my darkest moments, God placed me here to serve beside Him and healed me through the works that I do. Today, I can confidently say that I have found my purpose, and this message is inspired by this same purpose. So I would like to begin with a recap. Oh, is it on? Connect. So I would like to start with a recap of the past few weeks' messages. So on October 6th, Mohammed shared a message entitled Choose Life. In his message, he shared about the nature of complaints and the science behind how our brains change from this negative behavior. At the same time, we influence how our environment is, and it becomes a chain effect for our environment, this negative nature. So he gave the example of Moses and the Israelites, and in Numbers chapter 11, the story of Moses and God giving manna. In the days that God actively provided, the Israelites was happy and close to God. But in the days that manna was not there, the Israelites complained and blamed God for their miseries and turned away from Him. They had forgotten what God had done for them. They stopped obeying God and they didn't accept His solutions. Moses, on the other hand, turned to God. He did complain, but he complained to Him and asked Him for help, and God helped him. Mohammed's final message on this day was to bring our complaints to God. On October 20th, Mitra shared Psalm 23. She shared the story of David and how David turned to God in every circumstance. He never left God's side, and David's faith was so strong that he even defeated a giant. From this faith came this beautiful psalm called Psalm 23, which is a testimony of his life. On November 3rd, Mohammed shared about Charles Sheldon, the author of In His Steps. This is the novel where the profound question of what would Jesus do came from. From a simple question started a revival. And Charles Sheldon's question encourages us to talk to God. Mohammed's message emphasized that living by the Spirit will not gratify the desires of the flesh. He quoted, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." He said that the process of purification comes from walking with God every day, who purifies us daily. And from this, we experience God's unconditional life. This is the process of sanctification. And lastly, last week, Jermaine shared about Ephesians chapter on putting on a new self. He shared about Paul's encouragement to leave our old self and that the sins and our sinful desires and the behaviors such as lying, unrighteous anger, corrupt talk, and bitterness. We were asked to reflect on which parts of our old selves do we need to change, and what is the mindset that we need to change to be more like Christ. Jermaine reminded us that this is a journey of transformation. It's not about striving on our own, but relying on God to help us, relying on the Holy Spirit. It's a process of growing closer to Christ and becoming more and more like Him, and letting His life shine through us. So today I would like to share about purpose. According to Merriam-Webster, the definition of purpose is something set up as an object or end to be attained. When we have something to strive for, we are more motivated, we are more focused, we are clear on our direction, and this can even become our identity. Last night, I wondered, does our purpose change over time? And what I found is that secular research says yes. According to the according to William Damon, who is a professor at Stanford, who spent 20 years researching how people develop purpose in different aspects of their life, and who is the author of The Path of Purpose. He found that in a 2011 study, high school and college students answered surveys about their sense of purpose, as well as their sense of identity. How clear they were on the kinds of jobs, values, friendships, politics, religion, and sex roles they would have in life. Researchers found that the more solid their sense of identity, the more purposeful they were. In turn, they were also happier and more hopeful for their future. A 2012 study by the same researchers had a similar finding, but in the opposite direction, with young people who felt purposeful building a more solid sense of identity over time. So identity and purpose development are intertwined processes. According to Damon, most people who find purpose do so in their 20s and 30s. This is when we tend to start building a career and a family, both of which are major sources of purpose during adulthood, along with religion and volunteering. In a 2009 study, people were surveyed of different age groups, including nearly 400 young people in their teens and early 20s, and over 400 adults around 35. When they were searching for purpose, young people were more satisfied with life, but this wasn't true of adults. In fact, the more they were still actively seeking purpose, the less satisfied they were. And the reason is because of cultural expectations that we should be, at a certain age, have a purpose. So if you're in that age group, don't worry, you're not alone if you don't have that feeling of purpose yet. It's normal. So while purpose tends to be highest in adulthood, old age can come with diminishing sense of purpose and direction. In one survey of people ages 50 to 92, only 30% reported feeling purposeful. And the causes aren't surprising. Two of the biggest sources of purpose for adults, which is work and family, take a major hit when they retire and when kids leave home. So it can feel like the things that define them, their very identity, are slipping away. On top of that, their health also declines, and it makes it physically harder for them to become involved in activities and being engaged with people. But not everyone has this experience. According to studies, people who have strong relationships and a positive attitude toward aging tend to fare better. So in one study, researchers interviewed people ages 61 to 70 and identified the ones who were able to maintain or increase their sense of purpose over the decade were happier. Those individuals often turned their efforts inward to become better human beings, learning new skills or tackling long-held emotional struggles. Damon explains the pause of retirement and an empty nest can be an invitation to introspection in ways that weren't possible in our chaotic midlives, and a reconnection with the things that truly matter. So those who are able to understand their roles as constantly changing, constantly evolving, and that it's a story that they're still writing, are able to deal with the ups and downs that everyone confronts, and they confront it better than people who see themselves as fixed in one point. So the difference at old age is that people draw on the skills, knowledge, and values they've cultivated over a lifetime to start a new chapter. The good news is that the building blocks of purpose are already within when reaching the age of maturity. So I asked, is the purpose the same for Christians? So purpose for Christians is very clear. We are called to be like Christ. We may have changing careers, different life choices, but our goal is to identify ourselves with Christ. That is by communicating God's love to the world. It is not an easy life because it requires us to go through the process of looking inwardly and changing ourselves so that we can better serve our community. At the same time, since we are in constant learning process and we are intentional at serving our communities, according to the studies mentioned earlier, we are more likely to live satisfying lives. But what is unique about the Christian purpose? What's unique about it is that we never do things alone. We are at an age where being independent is glorified, and this often translates to doing things alone. But the reality is, as humans, we need connection to live healthy lives. This is the Christian reality. We are always connected to God's Holy Spirit, who we communicate with daily, guiding us in the things that we should say and do. When we connect with God, we are provided with a mentor. This is proven over and over in the Bible. An example is Joshua, who was the mentee of Moses and became Moses' successor. He was the greatest example of a leader in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, we see that Jesus as the rabbi guiding his disciples, teaching them all that they do. So mentorship is important in the Bible. If you don't have a mentor, it's important, especially as a Christian, that you identify who your mentor is. Finally, God will place you in a unique community to support you. We see in the New Testament that Paul writes to different churches about different issues. This is evident that every church was different in their function and their need. Likewise, we are different in need, and so we are gifted with a multitude of churches to find our community that can encourage our growth. I have found mine here at Joy City Church. So before I share the final message, I want to share 2 testimonies from this past week. Yesterday, I was reading a lengthy legal case. And while reading, I started to realize how tired I was from the past week of final exams and work. Oh, sorry. Oops, I won't do that yet. When I started to feel the exhaustion, I suddenly found myself thinking of the days that I dreamt of being able to read long, complicated papers. And I found myself thanking God for making this dream come true. I couldn't believe that I was doing something I once only dreamed of. That moment of gratitude brought me new strength. Last Friday, I decided to go to my school library and stay a little longer to do some printing. I usually wouldn't stay longer than 10 minutes at school after classes, but I found myself staying longer. Upon finishing my printings, I see a group of 3 students rushing to finish to print their final assignments. But they had no funds in their student printing portal, and they didn't know how to load their funds in a stressful time. So I felt the need to help. They gave me change for the printing, but after they had left, I realized that what they paid me was short. But I wasn't upset. I started to think about the people that I helped and who they were. And I thought that one day they will remember this kindness. And the person who reminds them will be Christian too. And they will get to know God through that person. I realized that if I was the person that I was before, I probably would have felt that I was cheated. But in that moment, I felt so much inner joy at the possibility of how one act of kindness can make a big difference. So the final message is this. The God who saved us from darkness will pull us out of any darkness in our path if and when we get stuck. And He will direct us to a place of purpose. And He actually heals us through the works that He asks us to do daily. Thank you all for listening, and that's my message for today. So I'd like to invite Jermaine to close us off.